Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome each of you to today's featured Broker Hunter Career Webinar, VALIC Leadership and Legacy. I'm David Testerman, Managing Partner with BrokerHunter.com, and will be your moderator for today's presentation. Before we jump in and I introduce our first speaker, let's take a moment to make sure that everybody is ready and familiar with the webinar control panel. We will be hosting a Q&A session at the end of the live event, so I'll ask you to ask any questions you have for VALIC via the question pane on your webinar toolbar. We're going to try to get to as many of these questions as time permits in the hour that's allocated, but if for some reason we don't get to your question, a VALIC representative will be back in touch with you to answer your question directly. If you're experiencing any difficulty, let me know via the chat bar. And remember, this webinar is going to be recorded, so there's going to be an opportunity to watch it on demand as well, and we'll send you an email following this presentation with a link. With the housekeeping items now taken care of, I'd like to introduce our first speaker for today, Jillian Isabel with AIG VALIC. Jillian is a Senior Regional Vice President and has been with VALIC for over 22 years. She is in the Atlantic region for VALIC. Jillian, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much, David. And welcome, everyone. I'm happy that you're all joining our career webinar this afternoon. I'm sure there might be some of you on the call who are very familiar with our firm, VALIC. So I'll start off by sharing that we are a wholly owned subsidiary of AIG. And we serve a very niche market, hence, some of you may have not heard of us. We specialize in defined contribution plans for nonprofit organizations, such as the K-12 market, higher education market, not-for-profit healthcare organizations, and governments. And we're excited to be here today to share our platform with you. When I talk to people about our firm, I like to say that we're one of the best kept secrets in the financial services industry. And if you don't know much about us, I hope by the end of the webinar, you'll be very intrigued to learn more. So as David introduced me, I'm Jillian Isabel. I have been at VALIC for 22 years. I'm currently the Senior Regional Vice President for VALIC's Atlantic region, which is pretty much the Eastern Seaboard. From Maine down to South Carolina. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Orlando Baturaro, who is on the West Coast in our Northwest region. He's actually in Sacramento, California. At the end of the presentation, Orlando is actually going to be spending some time talking to you about possible career paths at VALIC. And that's actually a good place for me to start. I'm a pretty good example of someone who's made their career here. I started, I wasn't even a licensed financial advisor. I was sponsored by VALIC for all my licenses. And when I first started here, it was actually obviously my first experience as a financial advisor. So over the years, I did have an opportunity to move into progressively more challenging positions within the firm. I managed a territory in New York City as a district VP after I had been in a financial advisor role for about 6 years. I then became a regional director and I covered the Mid-Atlantic states. I was a relationship manager in the Mid-Atlantic states, then a regional VP in the Northeast, and now the senior regional VP for the Atlantic, as I said. If we go to the next slide, just want to touch on our mission. And our mission statement is here: to be the premier provider of protection, investment, and income solutions needed for financial and retirement security. So I thought I'd just spend a minute to share with you exactly how we do that, how we meet our mission, and it's through our process. So our model has always been driven by our financial advisors who are assigned to institutions, and they go into the field, into the work on site, the work environment, and meet face-to-face with employees of our nonprofit organizations that we service. We really believe that to be successful here, it's about relationships. We're constantly face-to-face, we're on-site, we're building personal relationships that are founded on retirement planning, on financial planning, on income planning, and our main goal is to help our clients reach retirement successfully and not run out of money in retirement. The next slide, VALIC industry rankings. This tells you a little bit more about our firm. So again, we're in the group market. We're a record keeper for defined contribution plans, mostly 403B and 457 plans. So we compete with most other financial services companies like Fidelity, like Vanguard, TIA, MetLife, Transamerica, Lincoln, Voya, anyone who really competes in the defined contribution marketplace. As you can see from this ranking slide, we are a top provider in our key markets. So you can see that we have $22 billion in assets in the K through 12 market. We're a top 2 provider. We are a top 4 provider in healthcare with $21 billion in assets. In higher ed, top 3 with $15 billion in assets. And in government, we're a top 7, a market leader with $5 billion in assets. So, just to kind of give you an idea, so we compete for these plans, and in addition to being the record keeper for the plan, we're also responsible for the overall communication and education plan for employees in these plans. So we're responsible for enrolling employees in the plan, helping them understand how much they should save, how they should allocate their assets, you know, everything we need to do to make sure they are ready for retirement. We're responsible for workshops and seminars to educate employees, and we also conduct one-on-one individual counseling to educate and guide employees, you know, on a very personalized basis, helping them with their individual retirement planning. And if we do a good job with these employees and we build strong relationships, you know, often employees look to us for all their financial planning needs, whether that be college planning for their children, insurance planning for the household, any general investment planning and financial planning. So the next slide talks just overall just a market snapshot, essentially. So in total, we manage over 88 billion, that should say, didn't notice that, in assets under management. We have nearly 23,000 employer groups and more than 1.8 million participants. In terms of our distribution, we have 1,200 financial advisors across the country. The company is organized into 5 regions. And then within those regions across the country, there are 41 districts. So what can you expect if you worked with VALIC? We talk about the VALIC difference. One of the few companies that when you start with us, we do provide you with an existing book of business. So that's always a very interesting proposition. You also become an AIG employee, so you get an AIG corporate benefits package. We've got very competitive GDC payouts as well as the actual benefits package, medical, dental, vision, the AIG 401k plan that has a 3% company contribution, and it has matching contributions up to 6% also. In terms of your practice, there's a broad support and comprehensive support for your practice paid by the company, which includes a lot of education and training or your technology. We help you with your marketing, keeping your licenses, and with all the compliance that's required. So that's all really included as part of the package. The next slide is really describes the model. So I'm almost going to start from the bottom up. So I think the first thing that you need to know about is when we say we give you existing clients, it's within a very defined territory. So you have a very specific geographic territory that is yours, that you are responsible for. And within that territory, we have relationships with groups or institutions. So it might be a school district, a municipality, a college, university. We're an approved provider within that institution, and there are some key relationships there that are very important to us. And as you take on the responsibility for those institutions, part of that responsibility is maintaining really strong relationships with some of the key decision makers within those institutions. And I know Orlando is going to kind of delve a lot deeper into this, so you'll be hearing a little bit more about that. What's great about our model, I think, when you compare it to other firms, because you're in your own very defined territory, you know, there's not a lot of internal competition within the firm, and we do operate in a very collaborative environment where advisors, you know, help each other and share best practices because they've really got nothing to lose. So it's very much a team environment, very collaborative. You have a base of business to actually grow as you build your career here. So on the next slide, there's really, you know, I won't read through this whole slide. You can see for yourself, this slide really just covers all the benefits that you're provided from day one. And it's really organized by your compensation and benefits, the support we provide you in your practice, and which includes technology, includes marketing, it includes licensing, continuing education, and so forth. There's a tuition reimbursement program. I think the one thing that's attractive is flexibility to create your own schedule. And we also have, you know, you have the support of a local district VP. You have the support of regional staff who can help you with your practice. And then we also have in-house wholesalers that are meeting with you very frequently, educating you about the products that we have available, and providing you with best practices and sales ideas for your business. So at this point, I know Orlando has a lot to share with you, delving a little bit deeper into what you can expect and what the opportunity is for you in terms of the systems we have, the tools we have, and the products. So I'll turn it over to Orlando.
Okay, thank you, Jillian, and thank you, Dave, for the opportunity to speak today about VALIC. You know, Jillian gave a little bit of her background. I'll give you a little bit of mine. I've been licensed since 1992, so yes, this year I get to say it's been 25 years. I've worked for 5 companies, and for VALIC, I've been here since 2004. And you know, one of the things that I look for, being on the business development side in a company, is, you know, what does a company offer in terms of opportunities for engagement? And then when you are engaging with those clients, what are the tools that they offer that lead to quality interactions? And then I would say, last but not least, when those things come together, what are the meaningful outcomes that are created for both the client and myself? And I will tell you, throughout my experience of not only being in the industry for a long time, but also having been with 5 different companies, I can honestly say that VALIC has the best combination of all 3 of those. And so what I'd like to do today is kind of highlight, you know, what we do in those areas. I think Jillian did a great job of highlighting what we do in terms of opportunities for engagement. So let's take a look at tools and meaningful outcomes. When we're looking at tools that are available to us in the field, you know, there's several things on this slide. I'm going to highlight a few of them, but one of them is what we do in terms of managing that client book that Jillian did such a great job of highlighting. You know, when you're listening to a sales idea, or you have a marketing concept that you want to take from idea to execution, you know, that can be challenging. Sometimes you have to go to somebody in the organization to get that information, or you've got to figure out how to do it yourself. The company has truly invested. That word is on this slide, and they have truly invested in this process. Our client relationship management tool is built by VALIC. We build it internally. And so we have direct access to the people who build this, and we constantly make upgrades to it. We call it an advisor dashboard, but it is really designed to do just that. It's designed to say, I'm going from sales idea to execution. I want to do that quickly. It's Monday morning. I want to get started. How do I do that? If you're in one of the groups that Jillian talked about, and you want to look at, say, people who stopped contributing 6 months ago and haven't restarted, you want a list of those people. You can get to them just a few clicks away from logging into your computer. If you want it to be as complicated as, who's reaching a milestone age, like a 59.5 or 70 years old or 65 years old and hasn't had a financial plan, who are those people in my book? Let me click on those and start marketing to them, start a marketing campaign around them, or start calling them. Those are easy things to get. They're not complicated, and that, to me, is something that's extremely important when you're looking at tools that lead to quality interactions. As far as the recognition trips, to me, another part of quality interactions is the quality interactions you have with other peers. I learn a lot from other district vice presidents. I learn a lot from Jillian. I learn a lot from other advisors, and we have lots of opportunities. Our culture is really, Jillian used the word team, is very much built around team. We don't operate in silos in districts or advisors. We share best practices. We adopt best practices. Last year, if I look at the opportunities that we had in my district to interact with people either regionally or nationally, we had a training meeting in San Diego. We kicked that off at the beginning of the year. Midpoint through the year, we had a recognition trip where people from all over the country came together to recognize successes. Later on in the year, we had another educational conference, which was a national conference in San Antonio, and that was all about sharing best practices and learning. So, there's a lot that is incorporated in that word investment that the company does for us in the field to both have quality interactions with clients, but then also with our peers. On the next slide, I want to highlight a couple of tools, and you see there's a lot of things on here in terms of what we can offer to a client. What I would highlight on here is that first thing, comprehensive financial planning. And I'm going to talk about a couple of specific planning tools that we use, but you'll notice the sub-bullet there, full data entry services at no cost to advisor. This is yet another one of those ways that we listen and we understand what the challenges are. Entering data for a financial plan can be extremely heavy. We offer that service to offload that from advisors. We have a team at our home office that will take that data via fax, via scan, however you want to get it to them, and enter that data in the financial plan so you can focus on what you do best, and that's analyzing the data and looking for meaningful outcomes for clients. The other thing I would say about our list of offerings here, other than the fact that it's extremely complete, and I rarely find restrictions on things we can't do, is the team of wholesalers that supports us. Again, as a company, we understand what's important in terms of getting something meaningful to a client, and part of that is just understanding how a product works, how well it applies in a certain situation. Where can I look for opportunities in my dashboard to market certain things? Our wholesalers are, I think, tops in the industry in terms of being responsive, sitting down with you to understand these things, sitting down with you with clients. We have internal and external wholesalers, and I'll talk about them more in a little bit when I talk about career paths, but they are always there to show you how these things work, from soup to nuts. How does this thing work, to how do I present it to my client, to how do I get it implemented to my client as quickly and efficiently as possible. The next slide deals with financial planning, and I'll tell you, in my district, I take a lot of pride in the fact that we've built a culture around financial planning. We take the relationships that Jillian spoke of earlier in these groups and take them to that next level, where we really drive a relationship, where we really look to what is going to make that client successful, as well as their whole family successful down the road. And the plan is is a key point in that. It's the blueprint to making that whole thing happen. I'll talk a little bit about the Financial 360 first, because that's the core financial plan. That's what we've had since the beginning in terms of our financial planning process and as far as a tool. Earlier I mentioned data entry, and the reason why that exists and the reason why our financial plan is so applicable to what we do and why it always makes sense to our clients is because we own that process too. Several years back we were contracting this process out to another company, and we liked what they were doing so much, but we also wanted control over what those outcomes look like for our clients that we bought the company. So much like our advisor dashboard, where we have direct impact on what that looks like and the functionality of it, it's the same thing with a financial plan. When I go to a conference or when my advisors go to a conference, we can speak directly with the people who develop this tool. And so it's constantly evolving. It's constantly taking into account the things we needed to. It is very comprehensive. It's going to look at anything from an asset allocation to what that asset allocation is going to drive later in terms of retirement income year by year. It's going to look at pensions, Social Security. It's going to model them differently, obviously, depending on the client. It'll look at all the spousal assets. You want it to include an education or a module on education, you can certainly do that. We capture life insurance items in here, as well as estate information. And we don't do estate planning, but we can bring the issue out through this financial planning process and make sure that the client understands what the different risks are to their outcomes later, and we can immediately address those. Now, sometimes those retirement risks can be hard for somebody to visualize, to see, how do they work in real life? What is an interest rate change, or a tax rate, or what does longevity do to my long-term financial plan? And we can certainly illustrate that in the financial plan, but we really stepped things up this year with the Department of Labor fiduciary ruling when we created the Retirement Pathfinder. And that's the first item on this slide. This was a direct response to the Department of Labor fiduciary rule, but it's become much more. What we can do with this tool is just what I said a second ago. We can take this financial plan, which has a lot of information in it, which incorporates a lot of features in it, but really bring alive the risks to retirement, the risks to success, and what those do. And so a client is interacting visually with you on this tool to see exactly what these things are doing later on down the road. What a death of a spouse early on before the other will do to a retirement plan. What a tax rate change will do to a retirement plan. You see those happening live. And what this has done is it has created a process for which we can take something like the Department of Labor and have it work in our favor, have it provide even better service to our clients without a stoppage in your progress, in your practice management, and what you do best for your clients. We saw that need obviously when the DOL came out, and rather than putting things off or waiting to see what happened, we built this thing, and it's been out. We started training on it since the end of last year, and at least I can say in my district that we're very well versed in it at this point, and we're ready to go. We're not afraid of the DOL. We're ready to hit it head on. On the last slide that I'll speak about, I mentioned conferences and interacting with peers, and you heard earlier from Jillian and her career path. This is so true no matter where you go in our organization. When I'm talking to our current wholesaler, when I'm at a conference and I talk to the head of our financial planning division, these are all people who came through the ranks. These are folks that had 3 or 4 of the roles that you see on this slide on their resume. I really appreciate that, because when you're talking to a leader that they understand what you're going through, they understand what you've been through, and they have a really good understanding of how we're going to figure it out and move forward. we don't have a lot of outside people who come into important roles like that. They've all come through the ranks, so they understand the culture, they understand how this works. But this also presents a huge opportunity for anybody at any stage of their career to know that we've got roles like this available where you can start, you can learn, you can get adapted to how VALIC does things, adapt yourself to the tools, and really make them work both in your client's favor and in your favor, so that you can really get, as I started off saying, that best combination of opportunities for engagement, tools that lead to quality interactions, and then of course the last but certainly not least, the meaningful outcomes for both your client and yourself. So I'm going to stop right there and open up for questions and see, you know, what your thoughts are out there, and if you have any specific questions that you'd like us to address.
Thanks so much. That was great, everyone. Good presentation. Have a few questions here, and I'm sure these will probably spark some additional ones as well. But we're going to start out with the first question here. First of all, what do you look for in a prospective candidate for one of your opportunities? What are some of the licenses you look for, and maybe talk a little bit to the background that you look for as well?
I can take that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can start. Orlando, maybe you can add a few things. So license-wise, 766, life and health are the main licenses. And in terms of kind of the profile of somebody who's successful here, what do we look for? It's really interesting because we are, and this is actually something I love about VALIC, we, sometimes all from different backgrounds. I said at the beginning of the presentation I got licensed here, so I was formerly an employee benefits manager at a university. And I was actually really interested and was responsible for a lot of the retirement plans at the university, and that's how I got really interested and passionate about helping people save for retirement. But I got hired in without licenses, and I got my licenses here. And we sponsor a lot of people for licenses that have come from very different backgrounds. I did mention in my comments it's very much a relationship business, and I think that's really a key factor to success if you're very relational. If you listen to our clients, they're teachers, they're nurses, professors, doctors, they're people in the service business. It's really, they're looking to work with someone they can trust. And the fact that we work in an environment in the group market where you're not working really, you're working with individuals, but they're part of a larger community or part of a larger group, it becomes even more important that you build those strong relationships and you build those bonds of trust within your assigned territories. Obviously, if you've never worked in that environment before, if you have a client complaint or someone's upset about you, bad news spreads fast. So, we're not in, you're not in a silo where, you can contain something like that. So it's really important to have those relationships as a foundation. I always think of this as a very entrepreneurial opportunity, and because you're out in the field, you're not sitting in an office, so you don't have that structure. No one's checking to see what time you wake up in the morning or what time you check into the office. So you have to be very disciplined, very entrepreneurial, very driven to be able to, a little bit type A, that you've got to always be on the go, running, you're always on the run, you're going to meet clients at their location, they're not coming in to see you necessarily. That can happen sometimes if you have clients coming into the office, but generally speaking, you're expected to be out in the field, at work locations, either doing seminars, workshops, one-on-one consultations, and that type of thing. So Orlando, probably a few things you could add to that too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, you covered the licensing, and I think that's probably the basic thing. But along those same lines, and along the lines of working with groups, it's also important that people have clean records. Many of our groups require that and are requiring it even more. We've also noticed with a lot of particularly younger generation clients, millennial clients, that they'll do their research and they'll look people up on Broker Check, and whether it's the state life insurance website or FINRA, they'll look up information. And so we look for that really solid background. But in terms of running the business, I look for people who are ready to come in and be creative, as Jillian said, but also evolve and learn. Having been in the business 25 years, and if anybody's on the phone who's been in that long, you know that the way we did things back then is very different than the way we do things today, and the challenges are very different. When we start talking about financial planning and the risks to retirement, it really requires somebody to learn constantly, to adapt and evolve. I don't know of anybody today that I am particularly associated with in my region or my district that does business the same way they did 25 or 30 years ago. And so if somebody new is coming in, they need to come in with that recognition that it is going to be an evolving process. Working at a group and enrolling people may sound like it's simple, but as you grow as an advisor and you learn more and more about what that person is going to need to do to be successful in retirement, it's one thing to contribute. It's a whole other thing to be successful and take into account all of that client's family situations. It requires a lot of learning. We also, from an industry standpoint, are required to do a lot of things, particularly now with the DOL fiduciary ruling. We're required to evolve and change our business, and people need to be ready to do so without negatively impacting their clients' outcomes. And so, a lot of what I look for is the ability to change and the ability to adapt and be passionate and keep that energy up all the time, because as you all know, the wheels of progress and change don't change in our environment. They keep going. So we need to be exactly the same.
That's great. Along this, it's a little different theme here, but talking a little bit to kind of types of clientele that you all service. How do you specifically define territories? And I guess talk a little bit about how when there's an opening, those are assigned to new potential advisors.
Yeah, so I can start with that one. Some of it is dictated by the group and their location. Some groups are very simple in nature. They have one location, and it's relatively easy to fill that territory. You might have other groups that have multiple locations in multiple counties, and so it requires some adoption on our side of territory management and making sure that people are staying within their own geographic area so that they can take care of their clients and develop their practice as best as possible. But in other cases, when these group participants retire or separate from service, they find themselves in other areas. And when we're looking at that slide of career pathing, there's a financial advisor and then there's financial planning advisors, and many of those are financial advisors who grew their practice to a point where they didn't really want to do any more of the enrolling. They wanted to focus on the clientele that they've built, and so they kind of step away from the enrolling process altogether and focus more on a group of clients that they've helped grow and nurture over time. And those can be as geographically concentrated as that advisor wants. In fact, most of those advisors, if not all, significantly reduce the number of clients that they have in a group setting, and then focus on the ones who are separated or retired within a certain area. So we've kind of we always have an evolution going on. As we add new groups, we look for new advisors to come in and kind of work that group from the ground floor. As those advisors evolve in that group, they'll take on both planning and enrolling duties, and as they get even more senior in their career, they'll step away from the group and work solely with those retired and separated folks and kind of reduce their book and concentrate more and do more practice management types of things versus enrollment. And then, you know, as I'm sure everybody knows in the industry, and it's no different here at VALIC, people get to the end of their career and they move on, and so that opens up opportunities for other financial planning advisors to step into those types of books.
Oh, that's great. Sounds like a lot of opportunity there, and I know that having an established book of business for someone coming in is certainly very attractive. Can you talk a little bit about somebody coming over, let's say making a move to VALIC, they're already fully FINRA licensed and ready to go? Can you maybe talk a little bit about maybe how their first months look, kind of the compensation structure on, you know, kind of during the ramp-up period, and any other particulars along that line?
Sure. So the first and foremost, everybody that starts, regardless of what level you're at, would begin with a training allowance of $2,000 a month, and that's in addition to any commissions that they would earn. Some of the people that are, just as you described, fully licensed and may have been established somewhere else, oftentimes come with their own clients, and those clients will oftentimes move over. Any of those you know, transfers of money and commissions associated with those would be on top of the training allowance. Now, that new advisor is going to come into, depending on their experience and depending on what's available at the time, would come into either a group setting where they're going to be enrolling people, and there's going to be different forms of pay associated with that type of an environment. Again, those would be on top of anything that they bring over and on top of the training allowance. Occasionally we have somebody at a higher level who will leave, and that'll open up an opportunity for a new advisor to come in at that higher level to take over one of those financial planning advisor books. That rarely happens, simply because you know, those folks will either leave and before that team up with someone else more junior that will help transition that book. But it does happen from time to time, and those more established books can have a lot of recurring income associated with them. And so those would also be fully credited to that advisor. One of the things that I didn't mention earlier, and I think it's important, is, you know, we don't have restrictions on how much somebody can earn. If somebody really wants to take their practice to extremely high, new heights with both existing clients and new clients, and market for outside types of opportunities and really grow that, we don't have restrictions. So we welcome advisors in that mode of looking for a new opportunity, and you know, they're existing somewhere else and maybe are looking to ramp up their current business and take it to new heights.
That sounds great. Couple questions here. How would someone, let's say if they are coming from an insurance background, maybe they already have the life, accident, and health or a background in insurance, but they do not yet have the FINRA licenses, what would be the best way for them to be in touch with you and maybe be considered for an opportunity there within VALIC?
Well, I think we interview non-licensed candidates all the time. We're really, at the end of the day, we want to find the right fit for the position, the right person that's going to fit into the territory, that can be successful. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes you don't have that background, so it doesn't count against you. You just apply through the normal channels. I'm sure we'll spend it's on the slide here, and I'm sure we'll spend some more time on that if anyone has any other questions. But it's really through the same process, and if you go through the same interview process, and if you come through as a very attractive candidate for us, somebody we believe could do well here, we will order the materials for you and sponsor you for the licenses, and we'll give you a few months obviously to spend to get through the materials, do the practice test, and go take the licensing. So we'll partner with you through that process if we feel you are a right fit for our organization.
That's great. Thank you so much. Can we talk, I guess, a little bit? I'm having a couple questions here about the product mix at VALIC, and since there is such a heavy focus on financial planning, are you an open architecture, or do they primarily use AIG products? Or I guess talk a little bit about how you all implement your plans.
Sure. So, and I'll just start with that one, maybe, Jillian. The main thing when you're working on a group is you're going to be, as it relates to the assets within that group, you're going to be restricted to what that group has available. So, as an example, if someone's got a 403B with us and you're the advisor helping that particular client, as it relates to their 403B, you're going to be restricted to whatever that group has put in place for that participant, for their employees. Once you move outside of that realm, let's say you're looking at a 529 plan, or you're looking at some life insurance, or they've got some outside assets that they inherited and they want to move it into a managed platform. That's where things, completely open up for that client. As I mentioned earlier, I rarely see a situation where we want to do something for a client in a particular product or in a particular type of security and we're told no. As it relates to AIG products, and let's just take life insurance, for example. We are an AIG company, and so we do favor that life insurance at our life insurance desk. We want to make sure that we get that quote out for that individual. But we've got 5 other companies we look at, so that it's an insured solutions desk. So it's not completely open, but we work with 5 other companies besides AIG. So we're going to look for the best possible opportunity for that client to make sure they're getting the best deal. Sometimes they don't qualify, or sometimes there's a higher premium on one insurance company versus another based on that individual's health status. So we want to make sure we get them the best deal. The one place where you would find a sole AIG focus would be on a GMWB, and that is driven by the DOL primarily, and it's not unique to us. We've seen it at other companies where in order to provide the solution, in order to be fully compliant with DOL, in a GMWB situation, we would be restricted to the Polaris product or the fixed index annuity with GMWB. Other than that, if you're looking at brokerage, if you're looking at managed platforms, mutual funds, those are all virtually wide open. Jillian, anything to add on that one?
No, I think you covered it.
All right, that's great. Well, very good. Well, what for audience members here, and those who will be listening to this via recording after the fact, what is the best way for someone to find out more about the opportunities with VALIC that are currently open right now, and perhaps have a conversation with one of your team members?
I can answer that.
David, I think, yeah, great.
Anyone can go to our site that's posted right here on this page at aig.com/careers, and you can look up financial advisor in the specific area or territory that you're looking to cover, and go ahead and apply to any open territory, open rec, and the appropriate recruiter will reach out to you, and you can have a discussion about how to move forward in the interview process.
Very good. So it probably sounds like the best step would be to follow the instructions here on this page and have a conversation. I know a lot of the opportunities you have open are fluid from time to time, depending on what kind of groups are opened up in territories. So a conversation would be the best way to go. Well, very good. Looks like we've kind of answered most of the questions that are being asked, or they're along the same general theme here. So with that, I'll go ahead and conclude today's presentation. I appreciate your time. Jillian and Orlando, you did a wonderful job today, and it sounds like an exciting opportunity for our audience out there. And I'd like to thank everybody today in the audience for taking time out of your busy day. This webinar has been recorded, and so we're going to send you a link to view the webinar in about an hour from now once it's ready, and we'll also include next steps here as well on what is the best way to get back in touch with VALIC to take the next steps. So keep an eye out for this email. Again, you should have it in about an hour or so, and I want to thank everybody for your time today. This concludes today's webinar, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the week. Thanks so much. Goodbye.
Thank you.